Stress is something that we all experience at times throughout our lives, and most of the time we'll be able to use our usual developed coping strategies to help us manage those stresses that life throw at us. But sometimes we might start noticing that we feel overwhelmed and unable to manage some of those stress or worries. So we can look at an example of the stress buckets to demonstrate just how much too much stress can impact our well-being. So we all have a certain capacity for stress, and that's the maximum amount we can manage before our mental well-being starts to suffer, and that's our stress bucket. So we use our buckets to catch and contain all of those stresses in our lives, a bit like a bucket might catch the drips from a leaking tap. But the problem is our stress buckets have limited capacity, and if there are too many stresses and leaks, it might start to overflow. So when our stress buckets overflow, we can start to feel anxious, low, irritable, frustrated or tearful, just to name a few. So our mental well-being can really start to suffer. So to keep our stress buckets from overflowing and keep them doing their job, we need to let out some of the water. The good thing is that most of our stress buckets already have some drainage holes. And these are the things that we usually do to help manage our stress and keep our mental well-being on top form. So we might call these our usual coping strategies. So these might be things like spending time with friends and family, perhaps going to the gym or baking. But sometimes those usual drainage holes can become blocked. And an example of this might be not being able to exercise because you have an injury, or being too busy with work to schedule in time for socializing. And then on top of this, sometimes specific events in our lives can cause more leaks. So our bucket starts to fill up much faster than it's able to drain. So you might have noticed that your stress bucket is already overflowing. But there are practical and healthy ways that we can create new drainage holes in our stress buckets to let out some of that water in a more controlled way and prevent it from overflowing. So you could start by trying to unblock some of those usual holes. So could you go for a walk, or could you do some less intense exercise? Perhaps you could connect with friends or family over the telephone, or schedule in time for social activities when you have time. It's also helpful to add some new holes. So here are some of the things that can help drain your stress bucket. And we explain each technique in a lot more detail in some other videos in this series. So you can keep engaging in activities that are important and meaningful to you. You can try a breathing technique like paced breathing to regulate feelings of anxiety. You could ground yourself to the present moment when you're feeling overwhelmed with worries using the 5-4-3-2-1 exercise or an anchoring exercise. You could also try a relaxation technique such as progressive muscle relaxation. You could have a go at mindfulness by following a guided meditation, just like Leaves on the Stream. And finally, it's really important to be aware of the signs that your stress bucket is starting to fill up, so you can let out some of that water before the bucket completely overflows and you start to become overwhelmed with stress. So take some time to learn the signs that indicate that water is starting to rise in your stress bucket, and find out what strategies are successful in helping drain it for you.